Needham Design Review Board to order. I'm Mark Lusing, the board chair. I'd like to confirm that members and applicants are present and can hear us. So members, when I call your name, please respond. Chad Riley.
Present.
Deborah Robinson.
Here.
Steve Tanner. Okay.
Steve, you're muted.
That's okay. You can hear us though, so that's the key. Applicants, please let us know that you're here. Children's Hospital, 380 First Ave.
Yeah, Bob Smart here.
See you have a few helpers there, Bob.
Yes.
Greater Boston Addiction Center, 322 Reservoir. Is Tim
Here.
Tim's there.
Here.
Okay. Dedham Savings, 1077 Great Plain.
Yes, hi here.
Hi, Heather.
Hi.
And Buyer, 175 Highland Ave.
We're here.
Okay. Oh, thanks, Evans.
Yes. Here.
So good evening. Welcome to this open meeting of the Needham Design Review Board, which is being conducted remotely consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020. Wow, a year ago. Due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. The order allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely as long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. For this meeting, the Needham Design Review Board is convening by Zoom app as posted on the town's website and the Design Review Board page, identifying how the public may join. All supporting materials that have been provided to the members of this board are also available on the town's website. Public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other people may be able to see you and that you take care not to screen share your computer unless the chair approves. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. So I'd like to review the remote meeting procedures for tonight's meeting. I will introduce each applicant on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will take comments or questions from design review members. And in the case of tonight's meeting, we have a special permit application, so we will also take public questions or comments. After discussion, each vote will be by roll call vote. The building department now requires electronic submission of building permit applications. A copy of the application stamped and noted for the type of approval that you receive will be emailed to the applicant by Design Review Board support staff. That can then be attached to your building permit application. I also want to note that also in attendance is our town staff person, Rana Monadorfer. She's kind of half out of the view there, so I didn't slip by the box. So we'll start with the first item on the agenda. I want to open a public hearing for a special permit for CHB Properties, Inc., 300 Longwood Ave, an affiliate of Boston Children's Hospital, for signage at 380 First Avenue in Needham, Massachusetts. So Bob, you want to go ahead?
Sure. I'm Bob Smart. I'm representing Children's Hospital. I'm here with Gerald Topping, who is the facilities senior project manager for Children's Hospital. Kevin Parker of Selbert Perkins, who's a senior designer, and Tim Sullivan from Goulston Stores, corporate counsel. We have four special permit sign applications in front of you right now. And I believe that the presentation is going to be made by Tim and Jerry.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, would it be okay if I shared my screen? I have a presentation prepared.
Yes, go ahead.
Well, it's been a long journey that brought us here tonight, and I think it began with the Design Review Board last fall when we went in front of you for approval for the building facade in Needham. At that meeting, we did hear what you all said about signage being an important part of the approval process from your vantage point, and that we should come early to the board to make sure what we envisioned was allowable in Needham. So I'd just like to run through this presentation with you all tonight. There's four signs that we're seeking approval for, and I will point them at a monument sign located in the front of the building, two building signs, one that you can see from the Kendrick Street access ramp, and then one that faces 128. And then a directional sign on the corner of First Avenue and an internal travel way, an unnamed travel way. So the first option that I'm here to present tonight is one that we previewed with the chair and the building commissioner earlier this year. We just wanted to touch base, make sure that we are calculating signage areas consistent with what you all have approved in the past. And this particular sign is approximately 135 square feet. And it's about 2 feet 8 inches tall, or at least the text portion of the sign. And on both building facades, what I'm calling the Kendrick and then the 128. And we can see the key, the location of those signs in the upper right-hand corner. A rendering of what it looks like from 128 heading north. And a rendering from 128 heading south. So this option one was what we originally shown. And at that meeting, the chair made the suggestion that we might want to consider a larger sign, and we were open to that idea. And that brought us to what we categorize as option two, which is our actually preferred signage design. So the overall square footage of this building sign is 200 and approximately 44 square feet. It is the same size on both elevations, Kendrick Street and 128. And flipping to the rendering, again, 128 headed north and 128 headed south. And we did investigate a third sign option, what it would look like if the sign was even larger. And what we realized is in the southeast building facade, or the Kendrick Street vantage point, really the 3 foot 6 inch height letters was the max proportionally that you could put in the space available between the parapet line and the top of the ribbon window. It was possible to put a larger sign on the 128 elevation, and that sign is approximately 322 square feet and with 4 foot tall lettering. That was part of our evaluation, and we thought that that sign was too large. So just to go through the renderings, same vantage point, 128 headed north, 128 headed south. Again, this is more legible, being the largest, but I think this is a great slide that shows all three signage sizes in comparison. And again, our preferred option is option two. I think proportionally it works the best. We have marketing standards where our shield, which is the nurse and child, nurse Nan, and the lettering actual size are in fixed relation. So we think this is the best balance. We'd like to have the same size sign on both elevations. So those are the building signs. And just an idea of what those renderings stacked up next to each other give you an idea of the size difference and the legibility. Again, from a marketing standpoint and the branding, obviously the larger signs is desirable, but from a wayfinding standpoint, we are going to have people coming to this facility that will not be familiar with the area. And so we feel, especially coming from the Kendrick Street, that 3 foot 6 inch high text lettering really does help in the visibility on that approach. Moving on to the entry monument sign. So the sign that we're proposing is actually less square footage than allowed by the bylaw. You can see our chart up above. What's interesting about this sign is we actually do have lettering on the back of it that would be viewable from inside the building. And so Boston Children's need them from the public realm on the back of the same granite base where the world comes for answers, and that would be viewable from the inside. So that is a little different. We can see a small rendering of what it looks like from the drop off, and I will switch to a larger rendering. And you can see it right down here in the lower bottom corner. And then a side vantage point of what that monument would look like as you're approaching from Founder's Way internally in the park. The last sign that we're seeking approval for is the directional sign. When we had met with the chair and the building commissioner earlier this year, there was some feedback, and this sign, again, requires special permit because the size is 6.7 square feet compared to the allowable 4 square feet. But proportionally, the comment, 11'3" was a little large in scale. And also, if you can see my mouse cursor, the sign was located right on the corner of First Ave and in the internal travelway. That feeling that might be block lines of sight for vehicular traffic. So that was our first stab at this sign. And then this is where what we're asking approval for. We reduced the scale of the sign to 8 foot 10 inches. And that's in line with the existing directional signs within the park. They're about 8 foot 3 inches tall. And we also located the sign farther back in line with the southeast elevation of the building so that line of sight taking the turn into and out of the internal travelway wasn't blocked by the sign itself. So that is the directional sign. And just in summary, the signs that we're asking approval for are the option 2, the 2 building signs with 3 foot 6 inch high text, the monument sign, and then the option 2 directional sign that has the overall height of 8 feet 10 inches. And that concludes our presentation. If there's any questions from the board, I'm happy to answer them at this time.
All right, thanks, Jerry. I do want to mention a little bit about the meeting that we had. The board, we discussed it a little bit after our last meeting when we knew you were getting this finalized. Some of the members in the past have commented that the TripAdvisor sign, given where it is and on what it's mounted on, might have been more appropriate if it was just a little bit bigger. So their first option here was very similar in scale to that. In fact, they used TripAdvisor as a model for about the size to try for. So I mentioned that, that has been an issue for us ongoing, that occasionally that it comes up as whether we should have had a bit larger sign for them or not on TripAdvisor. So I offered them the option of, if they wanted to do something a little bigger, they should look at it and bring it to us and we could talk about it. But that and in our discussion last week, the board all commented that it's really relative to the building and where it is on the building and what the materials are and the space and the composition. So we appreciate that you put the 3 options together and gave us enough visual there. So I think we can make a determination. One thing, Bob, we had asked earlier about if you wanted to do a by right sign. You do get a sign. And the Boston Children's Needham ground sign is of a scale that would comply with the bylaw. So that's not really a special permit sign if you want to make that your primary sign. But it really, we'll just review all 4 of them, and I can designate that when I finish the marking up the applications.
That makes sense to me.
Okay. So first I want to see if there's anybody in the public that has a question or a comment about this. Do we have any hands raised, Ron? No, okay, so I will move to the board questions. Chad, do you want to start off?
Sure. I would say just one thing, just to make note, I think kind of for the record, obviously we're going for a special permit, so we can talk about what is the right thing, but it looks to me like the way that the signage area was calculated is not consistent with the way we typically do it. Just with the image that's on the screen right now, we would typically take the 9'3" height and multiply that by the overall dimension. I think it's the way it's written, it's by the bounding box. So that would be something on the order of probably like 68 feet times 9'3". But like I say, if it was just if they were going for a by right sign, we might want to talk about that. But I think just kind of to have it noted for the record that that's how we typically do it. I think I'm going back, it's been a little while, but I do remember having a conversation about the TripAdvisor sign and these letters. Do we know what the height is on the TripAdvisor lettering?
I don't, because I haven't been able to.
I actually have that approved signage package if you
Okay,
want to stop sharing for 1 second. So you don't have to look at me find it. So it looks like, Mr. Chairman, do you mind if I share my screen and then we can all look at it together?
yeah, that's fine.
So this is the approved package for TripAdvisor. And looks like 5'4".
We're looking at about 3'6". So obviously there are more letters, so it's a longer overall area. But if you're looking at them side by side in terms of height, it's not overpowering compared to TripAdvisor. So, okay, that's helpful. Thanks. So I think I would tend to agree that the middle one, just based on the renderings, feels like a good size on the building. Generally, when you can see signs on adjacent corners, we want to make sure that the lettering height is the same. Whereas they're on two opposite sides, you never actually see them side by side. So the one on the interior side doesn't necessarily have to be the same size, but in the rendering, it looks comfortable to me. So at least on first pass, I don't have a whole lot of issues with that. Let's see, I guess the next one is the entry monument sign. The lettering looks a little crowded on the monument if there's snow or things built up. So it might get covered a little bit, but at 1'3", it's not giant. So I'd be interested in hearing some others' opinion on that. And I would say that I guess it's a little odd that on the back side it's applied vinyl, whereas it's the channel letters on the front side. A lot of times if it was a conventional sort of a business, then we look at whether or not additional text is kind of advertising a good or service. In this case, I think given the mission of the place, I don't have an issue with having a more aspirational statement as people are leaving and seeing that out of the front door. And I think the reduced size of the Boston Children's pylon seems about right, and it's slightly taller, but it's got a curved top, or slope top, so that seems to blend in. I would say that the lettering, the Boston Children's Needham on the pylon looks a little crowded, so just the line spacing vertically, and perhaps could have a little bit more breathing room, but overall, it's a nicely designed sign. So I think on the whole, nothing's leaping out at me that causes me concern.
So Jerry, could I ask you if you know the height of the lettering, of the uppercase letters on the monument sign?
I would defer to Kevin.
Yeah.
The signage designer is actually on the call with us tonight. Kevin, do you know the actual text dimensions for the monument sign?
Of the "Where the World Comes for Answers" text?
No, I mean the directional sign.
The directional sign.
Yeah.
Oh, let me go and pull that up. I think that was on the sign drawing page. If you jump back up to it, I think it's more.
Okay.
Oh no, I guess it's not. I'll go and pull that. One moment.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like there's some room to be able to just let it. If you held the Boston and the logo where it is, it looks like there's some room to let Children's and Needham. I mean, I'm sure you guys will do mock-ups anyways and look at it in person, but it looks like there's some room there where you could loosen up the line-to-line spacing just so it wasn't quite as dense as it is right now.
The Boston Children's and Needham spacing is all just taken from the marketing standards for Boston Children's. So we were just using an existing lockup for that text.
Yeah.
But we could always go back to them and see if there's any space for.
Yeah. I mean, just doing like a full-size paper mock-up or something like that on some Gator board, just to kind of look at it. Sometimes things look good in print, but when you actually see them much larger on signage, that you might want to do a little optical correction for that.
Yep.
Okay, Steve? Steve Tanner, do you have any questions or comments?
He is talking. Steve, you need to unmute.
I don't have my big grid of people here. I can't see everybody. There he is.
Okay,
There you go.
thank you.
You're-
The 3'6" letters, I noticed that they are both front lit and backlit. I think that they should either be one or the other, but not both. It's like, that's what they do with like super commercial stuff in malls. And I think this is a nice building, and it should be either one or the other. And I think they need to make that decision. As far as the monument sign, I have no problem with that, except for this long sign on the granite ground. I don't know how well vinyl is going to stick to the granite, and they may be better off to use like a 1/4" aluminum plate letter there instead. And those are my only comments.
Okay. Deborah?
I think overall it looks really good. I had the same thought about the directional sign, the vertical dimension looking kind of crowded. The lighting on the entry monument sign, is that the same as the other? I can't quite see the writing on it in terms of the light. Steve's comment about the front and back, that was for the building signage? Or for this one?
I believe, well, I'll let Kevin answer that, but
Yeah, it would match between the two. So it would be lit faces, and this one we have halo effect on them also, just so that the pattern on the granite is highlighted a little bit at nighttime.
so again, it's both. I'm sorry, just to clarify.
Yep.
The letters illuminate, and you also have a halo effect.
We're proposing the halo effect. We just did that on a building in Brookline Place for children's successfully. It's a very subtle backlight that makes the lit letters stand out a little more. I do understand what board member Tanner was talking about from the backlight that you see at some malls, but it's more of a accent halo is the look that we're going for. And that we had proposed on all the signs actually.
The monument sign says 1 foot deep granite, so that's solid granite. And then the other one I think says granite clad, the directional sign, is that?
Yeah, we're anticipating that with the directional sign, just with the height of it, that it'll need to have an internal steel structure and then have granite around the outside versus just using a single slab for the whole thing.
Okay,
Yeah.
I don't have any.
Anything else, Deborah?
No.
Okay, I think I would agree with the other members' comments. The size seems to work well. I'm still a little concerned about the height of the directional sign, but I think if it's, as you noted, it's similar within inches of the other ones that we have in that area. So I think it'll work well because you could always take a foot, 18 inches out of the granite base section and still be fine. But unless the other board members think that that's important, I'm willing to let it to go ahead with it as proposed. The other thing that we've been discussing is the two things, the letters on the back of the sign simply being vinyl applique. Is there any dimension to those?
There's not currently. We were looking at either doing vinyl or, as was mentioned, doing a thin gauge metal letter back there. But for right now, we had just been showing it as an applied vinyl on that surface, just to not have it be too much of a major feature on the backside, but just be sort of a marketing message.
Yeah, I guess I think I'd agree with Chad and Steve that using a metal dimensioned letter would I think be more successful there. If you don't know how, you're not going to plow up there like some people have to, but I think that they could easily have in a snowfall drifted up against it, and I'm concerned about how well they'd survive that.
I know if you're doing like on a lighter granite, I know that whether you do like a sandblasted etching or an actual chiseled letter, you can put a little bit of a tint in it to darken it and make it look like more of a shadow. I would imagine you could do the reverse, that if you did a sandblast treatment to have a light bit of relief on the lettering, that there might be a light stain or something that would lighten it a bit so it pops. So, I think I would be open to a variety of different ways of doing it, whether it was a metal applied or whether there was a kind of a sandblasting relief, but something that's not going to peel off.
So I think I can say that, Children's would be open to metal lettering in lieu of the applied vinyl.
Okay.
From a durability standpoint, I agree with the comments that I've heard from the board. And I also just wanted to circle back to illumination if we could.
Yes, that was going to be my next item. So.
The proposed hours of illumination. That was something that Children's has been thinking about. And we propose keeping the signs lit 24/7, similar to the TripAdvisor sign. I know that the bylaw, I think they go off at 11, back on at 7. I think the hours of illumination, those hours are excluded. From an operational standpoint at this facility, our first surgeries of the day will be at 7, which means patients will be arriving around 6 or earlier and staff before that. And then it is not the facility is not open 24/7, but conceivably we could have people still in the building at that 11 p.m. hour mark. So, we're asking approval to keep our signs lit through the night hours, or 24/7, or whatever the correct terminology that the board uses to describe that.
You say full-time.
Full-time.
Okay, well, that also then kind of raises the issue again of the front lit and the halo lit. I'm not offhand familiar with one. I mean, I keep a good eye on signage because we do this, but I'm trying to think of one I've seen recently that was, often I've seen when we've seen that's maybe a colored letter that also has a halo. So the brightness level isn't too intense. I share Steve's concern a little bit that we've got white lettering with a halo added also. But I'd be curious what the other board members think. I'm not flat against it, but I would like to know a little more about it and hear more from Steve on where he's seen that particular installation.
Or if you have pictures of what was done in Brookline, obviously that would be the best.
I actually think I do. So if you could give me one moment.
Yeah. Well, you're looking for that. One thing I just want to plant a seed so we don't forget about it, but inevitably there's going to be some donor signage too. So I think just before we kind of move to a vote on that, if we could loop back and see what the kind of program might entail, because that will impact how all this signage reads.
Yeah, so thank you for bringing up that topic. So donor signage will be internal in the building in the lobby. So advancement, we've made that commitment that that will be the location. If there is a naming right to the building and that a donor does present him or herself, that will take place internally inside the building,
Okay.
not on the external. All right. These aren't great, but I think it will at least explain the effect.
Okay. Well, that works.
It's something. So this is front lit with halo. So Selbert Perkins was also the designer of these signs at the Brookline Place facility. So that is what we're looking at right now. These are unprofessional Jerry
Yeah.
topping pictures. So.
Yeah.
And I would love to say I could rotate them, but
No, that's no. We have skills. We can work our way through it. Well, that's
I mean,
helpful.
you almost don't. It looks more like rear illuminated than the front being illuminated, because the lettering is in shadow, so it must be a very, very subtle illumination in the face of the letter.
Yeah, the face illumination on this one is primarily for the oval icon, so that it didn't appear as just a dark oval.
So are we proposing the same here, that the oval is internally illuminated and the letters are just channel lit?
The letters actually on this one, they were face lit, but as you're saying, it is a very subtle face illumination, so it mostly appears to be around the outside. I think the film that we used ended up being rather opaque on the front of these letters. So we had talked about that we would like to get it to the point where the blue of the letters reads closer to the brand blue of Boston Children's, and not so much of a silhouette effect. But similar to this in the amount of halo lighting to it, though.
Oh, the faces would be brighter than this image.
Yes, they would be more blue reading, but it wouldn't be significantly brighter than this image.
Right. Well, yeah, they are blue, so it's not just a white on white, which is good. I guess I'm okay with that approach, given that they're blue, and so we're going to have a similar effect to this, maybe a little more color in the lettering. But I would defer to the other members for their opinion.
Yeah, I think if it's subtle like that, I would tend to agree. At some point, if it gets too bright, then you just can't read it anymore because it all kind of washes out.
Steve, what do you think?
I think it works with the blue because blue has like a short wavelength. It doesn't stand out as a color. But on the sign where you have white letters, and if you have those face lit and backlit, and that sign is more pedestrian, I think those should just be backlit.
Okay.
on the monument sign.
Right, on the granite.
Yeah.
On the monument sign. Okay. Deborah, you agree?
I defer to Steve on signage lighting issues.
Okay, so I think we're okay on size. I guess I'd like to handle these by type. We'll do the building sign. And I really just want to go over any conditions that we're going to put on them, each one, and then we can vote. I think we can vote the package.
Mr. Chair, may I just offer one thing? Tim Sullivan, Golston. Just as far as the term of these go, we probably won't be pulling a building permit until end of next year. It's the special permit itself has a long term. So we just wanted to be clear, if the board does approve it, that, the term is such that we can pull this when we're going to pull the project. So, like a typical special permit would be 3 years, something like that.
Yeah, there's nothing in our bylaw with a term limit on it. So unless it's some sort of, and this is not a zoning, we're not part of the zoning bylaw, we're part of the general bylaw. So some of those zoning regulations don't apply to us that the state has set up.
Okay.
So if we approve it, it's good till you decide to put it up. So
Okay.
in my experience, now the building commissioner is the enforcement agent. So if he decides it's been too long and there are new members on the board and maybe you should take a second look, he has that option. But Steve, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Since this is a special permit, you could register this at the Registry of Deeds in Dedham, and then it would be there for the lifetime of the building.
Yeah, sometimes it's just as far as when you exercise it, we actually won't be pulling the permit. So we just wanted to be clear that we have time to exercise it. But thank you. That's a good point as well.
We can add it as a condition if you want, that we understand construction, or that it may be at least 2 years before these are installed. We have no objection, something like that.
Yes, maybe we just reference the special permit for the project and say that, recognizing it will be constructed in accordance with that, and this will be good for the same term, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. What I would say is, 3 years, it's not inconceivable that Boston Children's wouldn't go through a rebranding. So if the brand changes and there's, whether it's font or the logo or whatever the case is, you would have to come back if the design changed.
Absolutely.
Right. I think that's, yeah, obviously this sign is approved. Any changes, it's not this sign anymore, and you'll be sent back. Okay, so I think on the upper building sign, the highway and the one that faces B Street, I'm going to calculate the area correctly based on the diamond, and that we'll use that to assess the fee. And I'll let you know what that is, Bob, after I get a chance to look at it. And is there any objection to noting that they will be allowed to be left on full time? Okay.
No objections.
Okay.
No.
On the ground sign, we're going to ask that it be backlit only, and that the rear marketing message be a dimensional metal letter. We'll let you sort of select that independently. And the pylon sign, we are just going to ask you to re-examine the spacing of the 3 words Boston Children's Hospital on the main pylon. Boston Children's Needham, I'm sorry. And possibly and look at increasing the spacing between the lines. So
I would say on that last one, from my perspective, if they decide to keep it, it's not an objection. I think it'd look better if they let it breathe a little bit. It's not, nobody's going to come back out there, I don't think, with a tape measure to make sure that they were spaced out or not spaced out, but it's just a recommendation that you look at it.
Okay, so I won't make that a condition of the approval, then we'll just suggest that you take a second look at that, see if that helps. Okay, so I would take a motion to approve the children's signage for option 2 for the southwest and southeast facades with the conditions I noted, and that we approve the ground sign as backlit only, and the rear letters are changed to dimensional metal letters, and that we approve the pylon as presented.
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, and roll call vote, please. Chad Riley,
Approved.
Deborah Robinson,
Approve.
Steve Tanner,
Approved.
and the chair approves. So thanks, Bob. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And thanks for the nice package. There was a lot of good info.
Our pleasure.
Although I think the town needs to refill my ink cartridges.
Too many options. Good night.
Good night, thanks.
Good night.
Next item
Thanks.
is continued the Greater Boston Addiction Center, 322 Reservoir Street, Tim Parker, and he did send us some more info. Thank you, Tim. And
You're very welcome.
so you want to just go quickly over the adjustments you made, and then we will have a quick discussion.
Yep, I'd be happy to. So the original was for 96 by 96, and we had come to the agreement that it would be 84 by 8, well, at least presented back to you at 84 by 84. There was a discussion about the little white line, which was an inset border, which we've removed to make the sign a bit cleaner. Once we thickened it up, it just took away from the rest of the sign. It just didn't look, the thickness to make it reasonable just took away from the arrow and made things a bit tight. So we've taken away the thin inset border that you saw originally. And then we've given, according to Steve's question correctly, is that we've given you different pictures and a different view of the building with the spacing and raised the sign up to about centered between the top and the bottom of the mullion of the top section. There was a discussion of whether it should be level at the top, centered. So the end of the discussion was that we would center it. So that's what we've presented here. And then we gave photographs on page 2 of the full build, the number of supports that'll be included, the lengths of those, a photograph of the basic mock-up and the brackets that'll be used to hold it together. And I think that represents the quote unquote bringing a aluminum bar frame to the meeting, which we obviously can't bring. So we did our best to photograph a mock-up and design it fully, so that I think there was a concern about the amount of support for the back. So that's what we've done here.
Thanks. So Deborah, do you have any questions, comments?
I think it looks much better. I think it looks pretty good.
Thank you.
Yeah, I noted that the dimension is shown on that masonry pier, and there's about 20 inches of space each side of the sign in the end. So I think that's better than the original size. So it was a little crowded.
Yes.
Steve?
Is the tenant on the first floor or the second floor of this building?
They're on the second floor. 2/3 of the second floor. 1/3 is still open. I'm assuming for a new tenant that has it. They've split the second floor into 2 suites. 2/3 for this tenant and 1/3.
Yeah, I like things lined up. I wouldn't mind seeing this lined up with the top window mullion, but
Okay.
if anyone else doesn't agree with that, I certainly don't mind.
Okay.
So I'd like to see it raised to line up with the window mullions.
Okay, Chad?
I don't think I was at the last
Right, this
meeting on this. So yeah, just seeing it fresh. I think, graphically, no issues with it. I'm just trying to go through my mind. I think at least in the rendering that I'm looking at right now, it almost looks like the side brick panels are about equal to what it would be on the top and bottom if it was stayed centered. In the image on the top, where it's really kind of jammed in there tight, aligning it on the top makes sense. But having it float, I generally tend to agree with Steve that I like things aligned too. In this case, because of the brick space around it, I'm okay with it floating too. I don't have a real strong feeling.
Okay, I think that was Deborah. Why don't do you want to talk about that? I think you brought that idea up last time.
I mean, I would be inclined actually not to have it align at the top, but I was just now looking at what the light fixtures, and it's sort of raising it up would almost like have it centered with the light fixtures, which might be a little better. I guess I don't really have a strong feeling one way or another.
Well, given that it's black and the window frames are black, I kind of liked it sitting the way it is with the brick. As Chad noted, across the top is about the same dimension as the brick, so it sort of picture frames a little bit between those windows. So I don't mind it where it is now. So we have 2 and 2. Who's Bob?
It's a good percentage so far.
All right, so I will exercise my superior authority in this matter and say we're going to leave it in the middle as he's presented. So, and Steve, you're satisfied with the information on the structure?
It's good enough.
Okay,
I don't know how the metal is going to seem, but it's good enough, I guess.
okay,
Being small makes a difference.
yeah, okay. All right, so I would take a motion to approve the Greater Boston Addiction Center sign, 322 Reservoir Street, as submitted.
So move.
Seconded.
Seconded.
Okay, and the vote, Chad Riley,
Approved.
Deborah Robinson,
Approved.
Steve Tanner,
Approved.
and the chair approves. All right. Well, thanks for getting this extra information, Tim.
Of course, absolutely, absolutely. And then just Steve, could I ask a side question? Assuming we have, since we can't bring physical things, is this sort of what you were referring to, that we just add more drawings and more photos of things that we might be doing that you wouldn't be able to see in person? I just want to make sure for future, because I have a few more coming, that we give you, at least hopefully on the first round, that sort of thing.
Well, we would have liked to seen a section through the sign, but we didn't get
You know,
that.
Tim, you typically would have on the illuminated sign would have a section through the wasteway and the spacing and the letter and tell us it was a 5-inch steep channel. We'd like to see a section like that on all the signs.
Okay, excellent. That's why I just wanted to make sure, because obviously we want to do what we can to be as correct on the first visit. So,
Yep. Okay.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thanks for the insight. That's very helpful.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it. Have a lovely evening.
You too.
Okay, next item is Dedham Savings, 1077 Great Plain Ave. Hello, Heather. Are you back?
Hello, nice to see everybody.
Want to take us through the proposal, please?
Sure.
Thanks.
So Dedham Savings Bank, they are going through a rebranding, and this is one of the locations to have the new signage. I'm not very good at sharing screen if you don't, but does everyone have a proposal in front of them, or?
Yeah, I have it in front of me.
Okay, I could try to share if you like, but
Do people have, is everyone able to look at it?
I got it.
Why don't you just, why don't you just talk about which one? So we've got sign number 1.
sure. So sign number 1, just remove the existing sign and replace at 11 square foot. It's a PVC letter, and the existing light bar that you see underneath the lettering will remain.
And they're adding the graphic.
Correct. So most of the locations have Dedham Savings, and then they have some taglines, and they're removing the taglines, and they're replacing it with more of a logo with just the name of the bank. So that's on the front, elevate the front corner entry. Sign number 1.
Yep.
Sign number 2 is identical on the rear entry. Remove the existing sign, replace 11 square foot. The existing light bar will remain. The letters are PVC, non-illuminated. So the only illumination is the existing light bar. And the third sign is on the Great Plain elevation. That's a halo lit, existing halo lit letter set. They'd like to remove and replace halo lit. The existing is only 13 square foot, and they'd like to replace at 31. That elevation there is about 70 feet wide. So I'm not sure, I should have applied differently, because I think that would be their primary sign, perhaps.
You can say that now, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. And then the 2 over the entries would be secondary signs.
I guess, yeah. Okay, well, why don't we, let's start with, well, let's start with this last one, because I think that's the one a little more complex. So I would let the members Steve, do you have any questions or comments?
I know that they do have 2 streets and they also have a rear parking lot. So I don't see any problem with the number of signs. And I'm not concerned with this sign is 31 square feet. I mean, a lot of it is added by the logo. So it's really not that big. And the other signs have actually, they're not much bigger either, just this added a logo on top of the letters. So I have no problem with the way this is submitted at all.
Okay. Chad.
My first reaction was why the third sign is needed, but then as I look at that small picture taken at the corner, I'm reminded that if somebody was coming from Wellesley, they wouldn't see the sign over the door that's right on the corner, the way it's kind of cut and chamfered until you're basically already past it. So, you know, I wouldn't have been around when it was approved in the first place, but I can see why that additional sign is there. I think graphically, the logo on top of Dedham Savings actually fits better in that kind of pediment than just the straight Dedham Savings. The logo looks a little big over the size of the 5 1/4 inch Dedham Savings letters, but if it's important to keep the proportion of the logo and the text fine, you know, I could see making the text a little bigger and the logo a little smaller. You know, again, it's sort of the comment we had before that, you know, if this was on stationery or a business card, it has a certain appearance, but when you put it on a building, sometimes things can look a little different. So if they're insistent that they want to keep the logo proportioning and spacing as their branding, fine, but I think it might look a little better with a slightly smaller logo and slightly larger text. But overall, I tend to agree with Steve that as submitted, you know, nothing seems particularly excessive, and it seems, you know, reasonable and appropriate replacement of what was there as part of the rebranding.
Okay. Deborah?
I guess the only few minor thoughts, given the light that's there, I'm looking at page, it's called sign number 2. To me, it looks like you almost want to raise the logo and the text up a little bit away from the light. And there's plenty of room on the sort of above in the pediment, although I can't really see the detail of what kind of molding there is on this view. The one on Great Plain Avenue, is that just putting it back in the same place as the existing one?
It looks like it'll be placed a little to the left if you look at
'Cause
where
it's-
the,
I mean, the location just looks a little arbitrary relative to the architecture. It's hard to,
it's basically the sign number 3 on Great Plain is basically in the same spot. It just looks like it will be, the logo looks moved over to the left a little bit from the existing sign
It's a
to
larger
accommodate,
sign, so
to
it's-
accommodate for the length.
One thing did just occur to me, sorry to interrupt, but the white channel letters on brick could be pretty bright unless we put in some kind of a film or something, you know, ideally a little off-white would be good, but it could be a little intense with it being everything just stark white on the
Okay,
brick. If it could be very bright, internally illuminated.
these
Or
are
is it, sorry, halo lit? No, they're halo lit.
They're halo-
Sorry, I
halo
take it
lit.
back. Yeah, I misread the small text on it. Yeah, no, halo lit's definitely better.
Well, Chad, I was around to see this the first time, so I can say that I don't remember the discussion, Steve, but we had a lot of trouble with where this should go on that facade. And I think in the end, it was there because that's kind of the middle of their front facade from that angled corner to the far end of their other piece. And it looks like it's kind of floating there in a way, but I thought that the sign was pretty successful that they've had for these several years. So I'm content to say that we made a good decision and that it'll still work there. But
And you have a good memory, Mark.
it is a little odd though. I mean, I remember talking about putting it over that pillar, and then it was asymmetric on because we had more of the facade image at the time.
Mm.
So it was a little problematic. So I'm okay
Well, you
with,
could center it over the 3 windows, move it to the left and center it over those 3. And then when you look at the last page that has the
Yeah.
bigger view, it's hard to tell here if that it would be too close to the sign in the next storefront over. Maybe that's the problem.
it sort of threw off sort of where the place was, you know.
So would you center the new sign on the center of the old sign?
I think that's what this proposal does. It looks like that to me.
Yeah.
It's really on that window frame
Mm-hmm.
on the left side of
Yeah,
that
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
here. Okay. And then to go back to Deborah's comments on the sign at the rear entrance. My concern is that we don't actually really know where that's sitting in that panel because it's a photoshopped in perspective element, and so I guess my suggestion is to let them install it where they can see it, and because I don't think we can say it needs to be 14 inches from that light shelf. But I guess we would give them the caution of make sure that that's high enough.
Okay.
Other than we won't make it a condition of the approval necessarily, but you should let them know that that's a concern we had.
I will.
And is the scale of that graphic element, is that pretty rigidly tied to their current letter size, or?
I would think so with this proposal, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Except the third sign kind of changes that around. Because it's proportionally much smaller compared to the D.
Right, I think for that internally, for the backlit sign, they threw that out.
Yeah.
The window.
Yeah.
Is 5 1/4 going to be visible enough, Steve?
It should be. I mean, it's
Was a more pedestrian related sign.
right.
So, okay. Any other issues? Okay, so I would take a motion to approve the 3 Dedham savings signs as submitted.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Seconded.
So the vote, Chad Riley,
Approved.
Deborah Robinson,
Approved.
Steve Tanner,
Approved.
and the chair approves. Thanks, Heather.
All right. Thank you very much. Nice to see you all.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good night.
All right, next on the agenda, 175 Highland Avenue, buyer. Evans, you want to talk us through this a little bit, please?
Yes, so this is the building at 175 Highland. The applicant is the Winhall Group. I'm sorry, Winhall Realty. And so all we're proposing to do is put this sign, which is the name of the tenant, in the location facing Highland where the former sign was. There's no other signage on the building at the moment. Sign is a little bit less than 32 square feet, and the sign details are on the documentation that we submitted. Bryn Robinson from Boston Sign is here to answer any technical questions you might have. Simon Boyd is here on behalf of the applicant.
Okay, so this, just to clarify, this building is basically next door to the Staples parking lot, correct? On the Staples side of Highland Ave.
That's correct.
Okay, so that's the building we're picturing in your heads as you look at this.
If you look at the second sheet, there's photos of the surrounding area, and then the last sheet down in the corner shows where the various photos were taken.
Yeah, I did look through those.
Okay.
So Chad, you want to start off?
let's see, I think with that kind of, I don't know, with the parking extension, it does kind of create a little bit of a barrier between the road and the building itself. I guess the one question, if it's the only sign at the moment, usually what we're looking for in these cases is in a multi-tenant building, what kind of a precedent are we setting? If there's a second tenant on the same floor or additional tenants on the upper floor or the lower floor, what's the kind of game plan for additional signs that might come onto the building? I think what ultimately, if there were half a dozen different tenants in there, we wouldn't want half a dozen signs all over the place. So I guess, this in and of itself is not the giant sign, but just I'd be interested in hearing what else might be proposed as other tenants come in.
Evans, perhaps I could take that. This is
Yes.
Simon Boyd from the Winhall Company, the landlord. We built the building in 1986, predominantly for AAA. They moved out maybe 15 years ago. We also built the Staples and Petco that was mentioned next door. The sign that used to be on this building was for VNA. And we only would ever allow one tenant in the building to have a sign because we're also concerned with the aesthetic of the building. And as I just mentioned, we've owned it since it was built 35 years ago. So we obviously care how it looks. And we've been holding out for a tenant that would occupy more than 7,000 feet of the building, which is 40,000 feet of rentable area, before awarding that signage to anyone. And VNA moved out probably 5 years ago at this point. So it's not something that we would take lightly either.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And it definitely helps to give it that context. It's interesting as usually tenants are trying to put too much onto a sign. In this case, it's a little enigmatic. I mean, I guess people who are looking for that particular business will know what they're looking for, but in and of itself, you don't necessarily know who buyer is, what they do, but evidently their customer base would probably know that's the meaning to them. So I think if this is it, I think channel letters, space lit. Yeah. So I think the point I was making about the last one incorrectly wouldn't apply to this one. That I think we would want to have some kind of a film inside the letter so it didn't become a bright headlight at night, that there's an illumination to it, but nothing that would be overwhelming.
So are you saying that you don't want it to be white?
No. I think what we've done in the past is we have sometimes, I think, the white backlit channel light, it can be extremely bright if you don't put in a film or something to knock it down. Sometimes it might make sense in certain locations to put to make it a sort of an off-white color. But if we stick with a white, then we would typically require a film or something so that the internal illumination just doesn't become a huge headlight, because white backlit letters can sometimes be extremely bright.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
especially true
there
on
are two,
brick
there are
buildings.
two
with
different
backlit.
acrylics.
Right, go ahead, Bryn.
Yeah, no problem. There are two different acrylics. We were suggesting the 7328, but we can use the other one that's not quite as bright, to your point. So it'll be white, but not as bright as the brighter of the two. There's also, a couple other, if you look at photo A, those A and B, both those are white as well. And I think there was another, across the street. Let me see what photo. So that was A and B. The other photo is G. It's kind of hard to see, but Bigelow. Those are also white. I think it's probably the least of the two bright whites. So I can do that for this.
Okay. Steve?
I think what Chad was talking about is putting a diffuser film on top of the white acrylic, so it wouldn't be so bright. But they could very easily add a dimmer to the LEDs, and the LEDs can be dimmed. And if it was a problem with the town, we could have them dim it down.
Yep, we could do that.
That's about it.
Okay. Deborah?
Nothing else to add.
Okay. Yeah, I guess our concern is, again, on find this a lot on masonry building, brick buildings especially, that it can be quite bright. So we would just, maybe if we just have a condition that you use I'm going to say the less translucent acrylic, or apply dimmer to the LEDs, so that should there be any issues, we can modify that going forward. Would that work for you, Simon?
That's perfectly fine. And lucky for us, we have the Hess gas station next door, which takes away most of the impact of any bright white signage. But yes, definitely we can do that.
We did what we can. Okay, so I would take a motion to approve this with using the less translucent acrylic discussed, and with a dimmer, so that in the future they could adjust the LEDs.
So
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, and the vote, Chad Riley,
Approved.
Deborah Robinson,
Approved.
Steve Tanner,
Approved.
and the chair approves. So what we'll do, Simon, is we'll mark this up, and as I said at the beginning of the meeting, and we'll get it back to the staff, and they will send it to you, and you can apply for your building permit.
Thanks very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Have a nice evening. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, members of the board.
Thanks, Evans. Okay. Next item is the approval of the minutes of February 22nd, 2021. Any questions, comments, additions? Thank you, Rana, for slogging through that discussion of 100 West Street, which was quite an ordeal of detail and discussion.
No problem. I just wanted to thank Elisa. She also went through it after I did. And I just wanted to note that I do use a transcription service. So for like the portions that were about the actual like architectural stuff, like I copied that word for word.
Yeah.
So if something was changed by you or Lisa, that would be more of like a stylistic thing than like me not knowing architectural stuff, because I try to like get the minutes as accurate as possible, because I guess I feel like that's why I was hired. So I feel like we might want to have a discussion about site plan reviews in the future, because I feel like when we have one of those, that's where we have the most issues with our minutes.
Yeah, we can talk about it, because really what I sort of look at that is we need to cover, just make sure that we note that some certain questions were asked and certain answers were gotten, and some of them aren't important in the end. So
yeah,
but,
once it was like 10 pages, I was like, oh Lord,
yeah,
oh
no,
my God.
I can't. It really was clearly that you had the ability to publish the conversation, and I just want to, I think we may just continue to do that to a degree, and then I'll do what I did, which was, okay, I'm going to re-summarize the west facade discussion.
Yeah, I just don't want you or Lisa to have to do like double work, because I just feel so bad. So I really want to get the best possible product for you guys.
Well, I thought it's great, because it's all the stuff is there, and I said, oh yeah, we talked about that, and I can just decide how I want to note it instead. So that's perfectly fine for me. So we can minimize and over time you'll start to recognize which parts I'm going to toss out, and you'll be able to kind of save yourself some editing on the early side too.
Sounds good.
Okay, so
I would like to say one thing, Mark.
Huh?
I'd like to say one thing.
Okay.
We did talk, they changed the leathers to solid stainless steel so that they would be stainless and match. And if it becomes a problem that they're too weighty, they can actually get fabricated stainless steel letters that have a front and a back fabricated, so they can bond them onto the wall. Okay. And the letters would weigh like 1/10 of what a solid letter would weigh.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to mention anything that with that option.
On the hospital?
Yes.
Well, we've already voted on that, so I think we can. Okay. They'll have to figure it out. If they're too heavy.
They come back to us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh God.
we're a lovely group to work with. Come on. So, so I take a motion to approve the minutes of February 22nd, 2021.
I make a motion to approve the minutes as submitted.
Second,
Okay, and we vote. Chad Riley,
Approved.
Deborah Robbins. Oh, you weren't there, were you?
No. If you need my vote, I approve. Otherwise, I can abstain.
Yeah, you're not. We're not counting your vote. Deborah Robinson,
Okay, I'm fine with that.
Steve Tanner,
Approved.
and then Chair approves. Okay, so it take a motion to adjourn.
Hi,
So
Deborah.
moved.
Seconded.
Chad Riley,
Approved.
Deborah Robinson,
approved.
Steve Tanner,
Approved.
and the chair approves. So we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Wow,
Thank
that was
you.
good.